All right, I previously stopped that one fairly quickly because I was right up against my 15-minute time window, I thought. And so, apology if that about that. But basically the idea though is with this, I say it's not Mark Twain. Don't the idea is that if you're going to quote somebody and make them kind of look silly because you're using those accurate quotes, that's not nobody wants to look stupid, I guess, is my response. And so I would caution you not to do that. Be careful about that. With that said, there are ways to get around it and still have the quote. For example, suppose somebody says something like, "It ain't," these aren't good quotes by any means. I want to begin by just sort of telling you I just made these up real quick. So I want to start off by saying this isn't really like a great quote. I probably would not necessarily feel the need to try to maintain it, but but suppose somebody said saying I ain't going there because it's scary. Well, using the word ain't, I would probably try to avoid. So I might say, Jackson said she won't be, quote, going there because it's scary. You can drop out the beginning and just start mid-sentence. Just make the quote go in there. It's fine. That's not a problem. You can begin, if you have a word or two at the beginning, a word or two at the end, you can just stop the quote or drop the quote and just put in the word or two and continue along. There's nothing wrong with being there's nothing wrong with just having kind of a quote that is sort of with paraphrasing in the middle. An ellipsis. Ellipses is, those three dots in a row. Sorry, this is, got messed up a little bit there. Like somebody say something like, "I'm not eating chicken," or what other, or that other, or beef, or whatever. Maybe they kind of stammered there. I'm not eating chicken or that other, or beef, or whatever. Suppose they were kind of stammering around, you might just put in ellipses to take out that stammering, that because I that kind of stammering that sometimes people do. An ellipsis works. Another option would be "I'm not eating chicken," quote, Smith said, whoever said it, quote, or beef, or whatever. You could just throw that in. Usually, if you put a quote in the middle like that, some people will demand that you go ahead and put it back in as ellipses, or, like that. And you could do that, and that might make it look a little cleaner. But usually if you're just taking out some stammering, I have no problem with deleting the ellipses. But, if you want to be most accurate and most fair, and I think that's a good thing to do, I would probably put the ellipses in. But, I don't have a problem with that, being used in the middle as a way to take that out. Now, this, as I said, this isn't a great quote by any means. It's just me kind of trying to come up with something that might be stammering, and that was the only reason why I did that. It's just showing ellipses. Another option might be using parentheses. Now, literally, when you use parentheses, you're putting the word somebody's mouth. So sometimes people will say, if you take a word out and you use it, so say instead of the word "this," it's going to be a long journey dealing with the loss of my mother and trying to heal. You could take out the "this" and put the loss of my mother, and that would be fine. The assumption is that you probably took out some sort of noun to insert that phrase. Or you could put "with this," then put in parentheses what they said. I would caution against that. That is a way to get around that. If somebody says, somebody said, "I is going to be late," and that's I wouldn't even quote that. It's not even a good enough quote to be worth doing. If you change that to "am," that kind of thing would work. That wouldn't be a problem. And on occasion, that's okay to do. But in general, I recommend don't get too overly cautious with trying to, overly ambitious with trying to clean up quotes with parentheses, because you're literally putting the words in their mouth. Sometimes I read things and I'm like, I don't think that's exactly what they were saying, but now you're making it as if they did, or they wouldn't have said it that way, and that becomes problematic. So what I would do is I would probably not put it in, although I'm saying that is a way to deal with it in minor ways. But if, in a case like that, I would say it's been a journey dealing with this and trying to heal, said Smith about the loss of his mother. That would probably be, the way I would handle it, because then people know what the this is. People will connect it. You don't have to have it right there because people aren't going to be able to connect that idea. Now, as far as quotes go, one thing to keep in mind is, quotes don't have to be horribly long. I mean, you probably don't want a bunch of quotes that are like 3 or 4 words, but, I would keep them short, a sentence or two, couple sentences. But, sometimes people will get these quotes because they'll record stuff and they'll then take and they'll transcribe the entire thing they just recorded, and they'll have all these really long quotes. Well, the problem is people, you can't really have long quotes unless you're cleaning it up. People don't typically talk in a way that's conducive to reading and writing of words in long formats. So if you have long quotes, I'm usually thinking you've been doing some editing of them, and that's a problem. So I would keep your quotes somewhat short, a sentence or two, 3 sentences at most. And that also gives you the ability, you can do it by hand. You can take the notes as you're talking to the person and you actually get it. Long quotes, at some point you just have to assume that you could probably state it better, more clearly, or more succinctly than a long quote. So I would warn you against it. But I do want to say, don't make the entire thing quotes, but always make sure to put a couple quotes in a story. You typically don't put 2 quotes graph to graph, meaning like, you don't typically say like, I love the bears, said Smith. I love the monkeys, said Smith. Whatever they be, you don't usually use quotes back to back. And so I would warn you, kind of whiz your writing, always try to break up quotes with another paragraph in between them. A paragraph that's description or advancing points or information. It can be, it can be an attributed paragraph, but quote after quote, paragraph after paragraph is problematic. You always want to break up your paragraph quotes with a non-paragraph quote. All right, I think that's all I have on this subject. So if you have any questions, please send me an email or I guess talk to me in class.